Welcome back to Roster the People Summertime Edition, 32 teams in 32 days. We are continuing to just plow through these NFL rosters. So I hope you've been enjoying these because we've been enjoying making them for you. We won't stop until they eventually cut our funding, which I shouldn't joke about that. Could be any day now. So please like, subscribe, comment, feed the algorithm, sign up for our Discord. Help us make the content that you theoretically enjoy, or at least tolerate. And shout out to the few people that did re-sign up for the Discord recently, because we are getting to that time of year. So people are starting to file back in. That's how that always goes. So appreciate that. And once again, Neil Smith, Jason Draven, Mike Burland, we're here. We're back. We're going to break down the New Orleans Saints here for you. Standard PSA as always. This is your 2024 Draft Guide Primer, where we go team by team, breaking down all the fun rosters and some of the not fun rosters as well. This is kind of in the middle of those two ideas, I think people will find. It's a little bit interesting, but it's pretty clear cut. This is obviously you're going to hear a lot of ADPs. You're going to hear a lot of ranking information that comes courtesy of Fantasy Pros. Jason and I are part of the ECR, so our rankings get slushed in with that. We are a Fantasy Pros affiliate. Thank you, Fantasy Pros. We love working with you every year. And if we have any major differences, they will be brought up along the way. And this is all based on 12-team PPR redraft. Today is the 16th of August. So welcome to week 2 of the preseason. If anything we say sounds a little weird or dated, that would be why. We are actually going to be putting up the recap show on the 31st of August. We are going to pre-record it due to some scheduling conflicts, but you will have your wrap-up show nice and early on the 31st, as promised. It's going to happen. So tune into that. We'll go through every team real quick. We'll go rapid fire and update any takes that need to get updated. So there you go. That's the high level, folks. How are you two gentlemen doing today?
It's Friday.
It is Friday. Thank God.
Blessed.
Yeah, thank God. Hashtag blessed. Oh,
yeah.
My word.
Exciting times.
It is exciting
Friday.
times. It's always never a dull moment. We saw the Patriots again. I had to go scrub my eyeballs out.
Hey, Drake May had his first touchdown.
Drake May looks fine. I'm not worried about Drake May. What I'm continuing to worry about is the fact that every time they snap the ball, the O-line goes back 2 yards. And when you follow the beat reporters, they're all saying the same thing, which is, the Patriots know who they are right now and what their team is. And that's why they've got Jacoby Brissett. And they're still evaluating other quarterback options because they are talking internally about, we know we are not putting our shiny new toy to get killed behind this O-line. We'll figure that out next year. But this is not the show to talk about the Patriots. We're going to talk about the Saints. So it's going to be it's a little weird. So it's a lot of familiar faces. It's kind of the same Saints team. The Saints are starting to feel like the Vikings of yore, where it's like, it's the same team and we just run it back. And we see what we can do. Speaking of which, Derek Carr, still here, still selling fake doors. That's what we're doing. It's Derek Carr. Jason, as a sidebar, remember when like we used to do those? Jason and I have been doing this for a long time, folks. So bear with us. We've been doing a lot of these together. Remember in the past when we were talking about like, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins is the Spider-Man meme. It's the same thing. Yeah, that ain't. Remember that? That ain't how that works anymore. That is not the same thing anymore. And it's finally starting to come through in the rankings and the projections, and the Derek Carr struggles are starting to get really noticed. So Derek Carr opens as the QB 26 in the ECR, which would translate to 156 overall, which is crazy. The public, though, the ADP of 221 will tell you loud and clear that Derek Carr is going undrafted in your fantasy league. And this is why I keep going back to the idea that paying for top-end quarterback is stupid when we can just get whatever later on. There's plenty of options, 10th, 11th, 12th round, undrafted. Don't really need to worry about this. I get that the high-end quarterbacks give you more upside, but this is my general point, is like, you can find values later. The one thing about Derek Carr that is a little scary for me is that we know what you're going to get at this point. You're going to get some pretty good production a lot of the time, but there's going to be 2 to 3 games a year where you're watching it and you're like, did Derek Carr just forget how to play football? Has he just failed? Like, is that it? And then no, he'll come back next week and it'll be largely fine. But there you go. So, and his backup is Spencer Rattler, who does not matter for the purposes of redraft fantasy football. That might be a waiver wire conversation some point later. Like
way later. Yeah.
Way later. Yeah. Week 12. Like it is not something that I want to spend any time on. It's not really relevant, but he was drafted by the Saints. So maybe one day. So there you go. But it's going to be Derek Carr. That's what it is. They paid him all that money for a reason. How do you gentlemen feel about that conversation? Where do you guys line up on Derek Carr?
Yeah, the good news is theoretically, according to beat reporters, I guess is best way of saying it. Yeah. He has been working with Chris Olave to get on the same page, and that's a benefit to people who are going to be drafting Chris Olave. So that's one positive. He did fine, but a lot of the time they were not on the same page, and it showed, and frustrations were on everybody, especially fantasy managers. So some good news. That's what I got for him. That, and I remember him passing to Alvin Kamara for 13 times for
again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
13 fantasy points for 36 yards for what was that? 16.6 fantasy points.
Yeah, but then if he falls in the end zone, it's 24.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like that's all you got to get. That's it. That's all I need. I don't need anything else.
I'm fine with the 16. Yeah, that worked out great.
You get some kind of rushing.
Yeah, and
call it 19. 30 yards rushing. We'll call it 19. We'll round it to 20 for margin for error. How about that? Call it 20. Wet dub.
That's how it works. It's perfect.
Yeah. Real quick, did you guys know that the Saints were 9th in points per game, offensive points per game last year? That kind of blew me away when I saw that.
Stunning.
Yeah, absolutely. 10th, I think 10th most passing touchdowns. Carr actually had a decent year. Like,
yeah,
I'm not talking about for fantasy and as a real quarterback, but 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, almost 4,000 yards. One thing I do want to mention, this is for like the entire team. Clint Kubiak, the son of Gary Kubiak, is now the offensive coordinator. He was like the passing games coordinator for the 49ers. So that's kind of the offenses we love are the Shanahan McVay tree. And so this could be one of them, and that could change. But it's Derek Carr. We know what you're going to get. He's a streamer when 6 teams are on bye and in week whatever, 6, 7, 8. And, we'll be talking about him, pick him up and as a spot start. But beyond that, like, I don't even think he should be drafted. I know he is being drafted, but
no, he's not. That's the thing. He's
not
ranked in a way that he should be being drafted, but the public has completely rejected that idea out of hand.
Yeah.
The public is like, no. Why?
Yeah. Considering most teams probably shouldn't be, if you're taking quarterbacks very high, you probably shouldn't be wasting another roster spot on a quarterback. But anyways, to me, he's a streamer. Pick him up in week 7 to start for your quarterback who's on a bye.
Perfect. That's what it is. He's a streamer. Don't worry about this too much. And he's also a situation where we know he's not going to crater out the skill position guys that we actually do really care about that we will be drafting. Speaking of which, Alvin Kamara, we referenced it. We'll go through it now. Alvin Kamara opens as the RB13 in the ECR, which would translates to 44 overall. His ADP is right on. He's going at 45. So you're talking about what is a 3rd round pick in reality. He's the highest end RB2. I will say this, Alvin Kamara is 29 years old. He's got a lot of tread on the tires at this point. A lot of miles on that body. Is anyone concerned about... and back tightness. He's being plagued by tightness of the back and also wanting a new contract, which I think is, my back. So I'm getting that vibe from this a little bit, but you never know. He's 29, that's when things like this start to happen.
He sneezed.
Twisted weird in his chair. You know what I mean? Like just something awkward. Like, yeah, he tried to like reach for something odd in a weird way. Like, crap. Like, what did I do? Like, you're on the floor. Like, life is pain. So my question is, are you guys concerned about any of it? The age, the system? What do you think, Mike?
No, I still love Alvin Kamara where he's going. We got him at a value last year because of the suspension.
Yeah.
I still think he's a pretty good value. He was RB3 last year in points per game. I know people point to, well, he's just not efficient anymore. He hasn't really been efficient on the ground for 3 years. It hasn't mattered. It hasn't mattered. He hasn't scored many touchdowns either. It hasn't
I don't
mattered.
care about
He's
that
still-
either.
Yeah. What I care about is he catches 75 passes. So he's going to get close to that once again.
We call that the Austin Eckler stat line, except for those weird outlier years where he was scoring touchdowns. Outside of that, yeah. 75 is enough.
Yeah, totally. So I'm in on it, and just in general, there's that group of running backs. I think they're early third or early fourth round picks, and Mixon, Kamara, Kenneth Walker. Like I'm happy with starting off three wide receivers. Yeah, Montgomery. I mean, he's a little further back.
Sixth.
For now, it's coming up.
He was already in the sixth, and
yeah,
that's true. He's going to move up. Yeah, if he does move up for sure. But those, like, I'm totally fine starting three wide receivers and Kamara is my RB1. Like I'm not saying, you got to go with how the draft falls to you, but just keep that in mind. There's some good value in running backs in that late third, fourth round. So
I agree that you can find an RB2.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you said he was RB3 in points per game, and he scored 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
hideous. That's a hideous number. Like,
sure, he can be washed up if he's going to catch 75 balls and score 5 touchdowns. That works out great.
I think it also has to do with the fact that what's behind him. You have Kendre Miller, who is being drafted. He is the theoretical handcuff. I don't view him as the actual handcuff, by the way. But he is being viewed as the theoretical handcuff. He's not on my must handcuff list, though. My issue with Kendre Miller, he opens as the RB50 in the ECR, which would translate to 158 overall. His ADP is 173, so he's going in handcuff range. My problem with Kendre Miller is he's got to prove to me that he can actually be available.
Yeah. Well, and the coaches have said as much. Right?
I know. That's why I'm bringing it up, is that that's the coaches saying that. So I'm like, oh, I don't like that nugget.
Yeah. That's the one thing that when you're coming into coach speak, that is, if they're saying something negative, you should probably take a note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they don't ever say anything mean. When they are, do not like.
Yeah, they'd just be like, I'd like to see him out there. I'm like, so would the rest of us.
Right.
So, yikes. Yeah.
He got hurt day one of training camp. Is still not back.
And he was hurt last year. He's been hurt a lot. So the issue is behind that is fan favorite, my favorite and yours, Jamal Williams. I love Jamal Williams. Everybody loves Jamal Williams. I don't. There's people in the NFL you might worry about. I don't worry about Jamal Williams because Jamal Williams' post-NFL career will be hilarious. He's either going to be a streamer or he'll be on Good Morning Football or whatever. Like, Jamal Williams is a likable.
Going to be breaking down anime film for the next.
He's a likable guy. Like, Jamal Williams has a career if he wants it, post-football, doing media. He's very engaging. He's very entertaining. He's just a likable guy. And I go back to when he wound up in, it was Detroit, when he was talking about after he got released from the Packers, and he's talking about, they didn't want me. It's like your ex-girlfriend. Now they got a new girlfriend. They treat me nice. And I'm just like, Jesus, man, you're so likable. Like, it's incredible. But he's not really a fantasy commodity anymore. He's getting up there. But my greater point is, if something was to happen to Kamara, this would be a platoon. You're not going to get one person that's going to own this job. It's not going to work that way.
Yes and no. I mean, because if you actually look at the second rusher behind Alvin Kamara, it's everybody's favorite. I don't know what to call it. Taysom Hill.
Well, but that's what I mean by platoon. He's not just going to suddenly become Alvin Kamara. That's my point, is that even Taysom Hill wouldn't do that. It's going to be all three of them are going to be doing stuff, and they're going to be playing that weird wildcat nonsense. So it's like none of it is attractive to me. We'll get into Taysom Hill later. That's a whole conversation for the end of the show. So but as far as running backs, it's not going to be one thing. So don't worry about handcuffing Alvin Kamara. We love you, Jamal. Never retire until you're ready. But yeah, not for fantasy anymore.
And we would also like to see Kendre Miller like that. I would like to see it more.
I'd like to see it too, but it's got to be proven to me, and I'm not going to draft it. It's not worth drafting.
I understand. He has had moments, but again,
he had moments in college. Like I get it. Like, but
yeah, we haven't seen anything.
No.
I just found out James Robinson's on the team. So
he is. James Robinson theoretically could. Right, like James Robinson's around. Like whatever's left of that. I don't know what's left of that. That man's got a lot of tread on the tires too. So it's like, okay. So it's going to be some weird platoon that I don't really want to mess with as far as the real running backs go. Wide receiver is also kind of cut and dry. It's a little interesting. So you have Chris Olave, who we'll start with, opens as the wide receiver 11. That would translate to 17 overall. He's going to ADP 24. So end of the second round. The public seems to be a little spooked. I think the public is a little gun shy from last year, to be perfectly honest with you. So we'll start with that real quick because it doesn't bear a lot of discussion, at least for me, because I am completely fine if you want to take Chris Olave at the end of the second round.
Yeah,
He'd likely be you either have a really high end running back and he's your wide receiver 1, or he's your wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I mean, he saw 50 more targets than the next person. So, and like we touched on, if they're actually in the same area and he's able to catch them, I'll take that. That'll be much improved. He can get up from the 87 catches that he had of those 100.
So bad.
If he can hit 100 catches,
sad.
Beautiful.
That's like the saddest stat. Oh my god.
Yeah. So
130 targets and he caught 80.
Yeah. Not super.
He's in that group with Garrett Wilson, Drake London, in the sense of third-year receivers. We're expecting a breakout, a bigger season. My only fear with Chris Olave, I love the player. I'm fine with drafting him where he is like one more year of what we've gotten, which is great to start your career. But it's like, is he just going to be like DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, good players, good receivers that we know if they were on a different team with a better quarterback, they'd be amazing, but kind of, limited by their quarterback a little bit.
Allen Robinson back in the day. I could keep doing this game for a while, actually. Like there's a lot of names in that bucket. I think probably. It's a shame what it is. Like, unless Spencer Rattler is going to be, because we know what Derek Carr is. It's always going to be that. Unless Spencer Rattler is secretly Peyton Manning, and I'm very dubious of that. Yeah, probably. And we'll see what happens with Chris Olave, because I think he probably will be on the Saints for a good minute. Because what are they going to do otherwise? What are you going to spend your money on?
Well, I think the other issue, too, is like they have a lot of money tied up in Taysom Hill.
Yeah. We'll get into that here in a moment.
I'm talking just contractual-wise.
Yeah, just contractually. They do have a lot of that. But that contract's going to be over soon. I think we got one more year of the Taysom Hill contract, I think, is what it is.
They've been in cap hell like for 10 years, it seems like.
My whole life. Forever.
It seems like it, yeah.
Literally my whole life. Like it's that kind of thing. But yeah, we're all happy with Chris Olave. You know what you're getting. And I think we would agree it is priced appropriately for what you should expect. And then we get into the new wide receiver 2, one of my fan favorites. I love this guy, Rashid Shaheed. Oh man, I remember when he came into the league and he was running kicks, and he was like the 5th wide receiver. And it was one of those things where you just see him get the ball, and it's like, oh my god, he's so much faster than everyone else. Like, why are you so much faster than everyone else on the field? It's like a cartoon. Like, he's just so much faster, and you can't live on that forever in the NFL. Eventually that will slow down. So you got to learn how to play football. But he's still so fast. So people are starting to notice about Rashid Shaheed a little bit, because Jason and I we've talked about it too much, honestly.
Sorry.
Honestly, me, you, and I used to go into this with Lance Exley every week. I was like, Rashid Shaheed, pick him up. But he best ball slam dunk. But it's a little interesting for redraft where you got to start them. Although maybe with the new sleeper auto substitution rule, maybe this is a thing again. And we'll get into that on the wrap-up show. We are going to do a little thing about the sleeper auto substitution change that just got announced earlier this week. We will do that on the wrap-up show because it's too long to get into now. But for Rashid Shaheed, he opens as the wide receiver 55 in the ECR, which translates to 133 overall. He's going at 144 ADP, 12th round pick.
I mean, and it's probably going to drop because I'm pretty sure today came out with another injury. Last week was a hamstring. Now today it's a toe. But when you're that fast, I'm not surprised. Like,
you're fighting the earth.
Yeah.
The earth is like, slow down. And he's like, no.
He doesn't have the Pacheco thing where he stomps. It's just like, it's, what was the mouse? Jerry's cousin's name? The fast one? No.
Oh, Speedy Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of the
Yeah.
stupid cartoon. And off he goes. So, and now we keep touching on it specifically. The kickoff man, it's free potential points. Last year he scored 5 touchdowns. Like, it's hard to get away from that.
As I say, it only takes one with him. That's the beauty of Rashid Shaheed, is that 1 for 80 and a touchdown.
And you have
and he's a flex.
Yeah.
And he's being drafted as a flex. So that's where I'm like, it's a good flex. It's not a consistent flex. But in the new weird auto substitution world that we might be living in, I don't know. Like, so I'm fine with it. I'm good with this if this is what people are interested in. I like having different options for flexes. A good, well-rounded team should have floor guys and ceiling guys, depending on what you need. And he is a ceiling guy. It's like Tyler Lockett, but younger.
Faster. Oh,
and faster. And,
well, that's
so that is one of those situations where people keep calling me. I keep telling them to stop calling me. They don't listen. Like, that's one of those situations. My apologies to the viewer, because I did turn around awkwardly there because my phone started ringing. It's Pavlov response. I hear my phone and I just whip around like,
what do you want?
Yeah, it is kind of like, what do you need now? So that's what we're dealing with in the background there. So I think we all in alignment on Rashid Shaheed.
We brought up the injury though, so the next guy that you want to look at there is A.T. Perry. Because
go ahead, talk about A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry and Cedric Wilson Jr. are the next men up, and neither one of them have an ADP. They're not draftable. You don't need to worry about drafting them, but they are there. I was wondering what happened to Cedric Wilson. I was literally wondering what happened to Cedric Wilson in the offseason. I was like, where did he wind up? Here he is.
Yeah.
Do you care about A.T. Perry? Because I don't.
I mean, only if Shaheed's out, because last year he had 4 touchdowns and he only had 12 receptions and 246 yards. Like,
I don't care.
Yeah.
Not
he's dealing with the injury as well. And it sounds like actually Cedric Wilson is the wide receiver 3, but I like Perry just because he's new, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. Unfortunately, it's just if Shaheed's really hurt, it just more in on Olave and Kamara. Really, like that's where it goes to, or should hopefully goes to.
Yeah, your real point centers on this team are Kamara and Olave, and then theoretically what we're going to pivot into now, because you're not drafting A.T. Perry. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. And then, for waiver wire, maybe as a waiver wire thing, we'll see what happens. Cedric Wilson, similar idea. If A.T. Perry's hurt, we've seen Cedric Wilson have success in the league at various points and get buried on the depth charts. So my expectations are not very high for either A.T. Perry or Cedric Wilson. It's potential waiver wire fodder. Tight end. So there's 2 tight ends on this team because of the unique way that their roster works. We'll do the real tight end first, which is Juwan Johnson. So Juwan Johnson opens as the tight end 23, which would translate to 187 overall. He's going to 253. You're not drafting Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson's been hurt. I'm not even going to get into Juwan Johnson beyond that. He is the actual tight end of the team. He will play tight end for them when he's healthy. You don't need to worry about that. You're not.
He's on the pup.
He's on the pup. Too. You don't worry about this. It's not a draftable commodity. It's not something I think you need to worry about. We will let you know on the waiver wire show if that is something that you need to pay attention to. Like the player, but he's not a draftable asset in 2024, and we are a long way from him even being like a waiver wire pickup. We're weeks from that.
Especially if he's on the pup. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still on the pup. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend the rest of our time here talking about Taysom Hill. Jason, before you get into it, because I'm just going to defer, I'm just going to take you off your leash and let you go. So before you do that, Taysom Hill opens as the tight end 24, which would translate to 189 overall. His ADP is 194. Taysom Hill is one of those guys that is right on the bubble of being draftable. He's right on the cut line of being like Mr. Irrelevant in a fantasy draft. Jason, go.
Yeah. So like we talked about, this is a utility player. He will play quarterback, tight end, running back. He really does it all. Last year, 81 rushes, 401 yards, which is almost 5 yards a carry. That's insane. He also catches passes, not super, but 75 for 460. Oh, wrong one. That was Alvin Kamara. Because I was also lower. 33 for 291, 2 touchdowns there. So already has 6 touchdowns as a spot start. I mean, it seemed like he bunches those together more often than not. And we talked about Johnson being hurt. Taysom Hill's really the only other option, and they're going to use him as they kind of need to because they're still paying the guy. He's probably somebody you can just randomly throw out there in any game, and he is going to put up points. It's stupid.
Okay.
It's really hit or miss just because he is just so random when he scores, but when he scores, it's a big game.
So, Mike, what do you think about Taysom Hill? Do you
honestly? I do if you can start him as tight end, obviously.
Yes,
and that's a big thing. I think sleeper you can, other places you can't, but
sleeper you can. MFL, I believe you can. My fantasy league. There's a few others. You got to look in your individual settings because if he's a quarterback, I'm not interested.
No.
Yeah.
But if he's a tight end, okay, all right, that's a little different.
As we talked about it. We go for the late round tight ends most of the time, and honestly, like I much rather a guy in Taysom Hill who's going to have like 5 big games every year rather than a guy that just gives me like 8 points every week. Give me the 5, 15, 20-point games, and like it's already irrelevant what my tight end does. If he puts up 15, 20 points, I'm winning that week because I built my team that way. So I like Taysom Hill for that reason.
So Taysom Hill is one of those things. There's a reason why he's on the borderline of being drafted. It's whether or not you can start him at tight end is part of it. The other issue is I believe that he is functionally the 3rd point center on this team at this point. The problem is how efficient will they be to actually be able to support 3-point centers? So that becomes the problem. I feel good about Kamara and Olave. Rashid Shaheed, you have a certain amount of upside and the price is right. So you get into that idea. Those are the 3 things on this team that I'm excited about, that I would tell you draft those things with confidence for what they are. Taysom Hill, I might be willing to leave on the waiver wire, and I will just say this. It is the ultimate boomer bust play. You're going to get a 2 or you're going to get a 20. And I do not know. Anyone who tells you that they think they know when that's going to be is lying to you. You're going to have those weeks. He's going to go out. He's going to do nothing. And then you have other weeks where he's just doing everything. But to Jason's point from before that he was alluding to, if something was to happen to Kamara, okay, Taysom Hill is going to be running the Wildcat. And then it gets into the idea of like, okay, now I'm interested. Because he's going to get enough work to matter at that point. But when the other guys are healthy, he's on the fringes. But it does get interesting given how bad tight end is as a position.
Well,
so that's Taysom Hill.
The other thing is if Derek Carr gets hurt.
Yeah. And if Derek Carr gets hurt, I think it might be Rattler, but then you'll get more Wildcat. More Wildcat will happen. So there is a path to Taysom Hill mattering, which is why he's on the fringe of draftable. I wouldn't feel that I was obligated to draft Taysom Hill, but if you're looking for a real upside play, the ceiling is really high, but the floor is also in the basement, and you're not going to know.
Yeah, he had 2 games with less than 1 fantasy point.
Right. So you're going to have these weeks where he just disappears and they don't use him, but you're going to have these other weeks where you're like kicking yourself. So it's not going to be consistent. It's going to be hair pulling in like level frustrating. I don't really like things like that in general, but if you are a gambler, if you like to gamble
or best ball,
if you like best ball or you like to gamble, Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is the equivalent of going into a casino and putting it all on red or all on black and just spin the wheel. And that's what it is. We either win or we don't. And that's what you got to know with this. It's going to be frustrating like that. Okay, we covered it. That's the Saints. Like we said at the start, the Saints is kind of cut and dry. It's the same team every year. It is starting to remind me of the Vikings of the last several years where it's like, it's just the same team. So the question I have is this. Does anybody have anything else they want to say Saints related? Because I think we got there.
I think we're good.
Perfect. Then I tell you what, tune in tomorrow where we're going to break down the New York football Giants, give you a little sneak peek of what you can expect tomorrow. Tune in for that. But until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!